It's the second generation sensation. Hey guys, what's up? It's Brian Hardy. I'm back for the Brian Hardy story, Wrestling with Life, Rocking All Night, Chapter 2 tonight. We're going to read that together. But real fast, before we get into that, I just wanted to take a quick second to plug my brand new EP called Worth a Shot. I'm excited for songs, brand new. It's my first ever venture into the country music world. Worth a Shot, How You Gonna Hide That? Me Without You and the Better You. It's available for $13. You can DM us at Brian Hardy Music or Brian's Wrestling Collection or whatever you feel necessary, and we can get you hooked up with the payment on that, and then it will ship out to you. Obviously, if you want it autographed and stuff, we can do that too. But it's in the nice shrink wrap for brand new for any of you that want it. So, worth a shot. It's worth a shot. It's worth a shot to advertise it. That's for sure. All right, let's get started on this real quick. This is called Chapter 2, A Living Nightmare. So, thanks so much to everybody that had listened to the first video, which was Chapter 1. Like I said, some people are like, hey man, I don't read, so can you read this to me? And I'm like, yeah, and part of me still wants people to buy the book, and I hope you do. And I hope you bring it to a show, and I hope you have me autograph it, or I hope you show up to a show and buy it at the merch table and have me autograph it. But either way, here we go. This is a hard chapter for me, so I am going to do my very best not to show emotion during this chapter, not to cry, not to get upset or anything like that. But I will say that when I was writing the book, I wrote this chapter in 2017, and it is still equally just as emotional for me now as it was back then. And I actually can remember the first person that I ever read this chapter to was my old boss, who was like a father figure to me. And it was really sad for him. He was like, I had no idea that, you lived through this kind of stuff. So here we go. Chapter 2, A Living Nightmare. Watching the home video back on tape of this great wedding led me to believe that the only two who truthfully looked excited were the two getting married. My grandfather refused to give my mother away. He said that if she wanted to get married again, go ahead, but she would need to find someone else to walk her down the aisle. So my mom's brother David did. Uncle Dave was a sweetheart who would give you the shirt off his back to anyone in need, and years later I believed was the reason that I survived life from the age of 8 through 13. So he walked her down the aisle to give her away to this guy she barely knew, but was desperately seeking love from, or maybe it was lust, who knows. This guy had a pretty wild and crazy past himself, and listening to his stories would make anyone understand why he treated us the way he did. He grew up in a foster home in Omaha, Nebraska because he played witness to his mother and father having an argument, and his mom shot his dad in the chest with a shotgun. All of his siblings and himself were put into foster care, and none of them ever recovered as adults, seeing such a horrific scene as children. My mom can preach whatever she would like of lies upon denial, but marrying this man was to try to get over the love and loss of my father. She really deep down did love him, and marrying this other man was to fill a void. She said it to herself that she thought she would be with one man her whole life. What happens when you are not over an issue or a person? You talk about it a lot. We went to the chiropractor's office or physical therapy, or hell, we may have even just ran into someone at the mall. Yep, that's my ex-husband on WWF TV. He took the best years of my life. She was nowhere near done with the first marriage. He left her, and he left the two boys, and she could not do anything about it except remarry. My stepfather, God, I hate saying that, was also a recovering drug addict. Hard street drugs that he swore to my mom was in his past. He was a very bitter, jealous, tough man that could not handle hearing stories about my father's success. It ate him alive, and I could see the look in his eyes anytime someone would bring Mr. Wrestler Man up. It was on fire. Actually, it was gas being poured into a fire that made me frightened to death to ever ask questions about who my father was or where he was. Only a year into the marriage, he would say things like, who gives a shit about him? I'm your dad now. Or often speaking terrible things about the man when he knew just as much about the guy as I did. I learned over the years to block it out. These were just words. He caught on. When words could no longer play an effect on my emotions, verbal had turned into psychological actions. I would often sit in the living room floor on the weekends playing with my action figures my grandparents had purchased for me. He hated wrestling because of the man who impregnated my mother was a pro wrestler. Don't get me wrong, my grandparents didn't care for wrestling either because they believed it destroyed my parents' marriage. He chose a career in wrestling over his wife and children. However, they also knew it was what I enjoyed. It was my form of entertainment, and they didn't want to take that creative outlet from me. My stepfather didn't care. He would walk over to my ring, pick up a figure, and say, look, here's what I think of wrestling in your faggot father, as he would pull the legs apart in the opposite direction as if he was breaking a wishbone from a Thanksgiving turkey. He would throw it down and walk away. I stayed tough until he left the room. I was crying, thinking to myself, I have no money to get a new figure, and I can't tell Grandma and Pop what he is doing. It will destroy the family, when in reality the family was destroyed long before the building process. I had this happen to me so many times that I stopped asking for action figures because I knew they would end up broken. He stepped in a few of my rings, and there were times where my mother would see this happening and do nothing. I learned to block that out too. Verbal and mental abuse. Forget it, kid. Put up your wall and be strong. I remember telling myself that. He had to find a way to break me again because I was a fighter and figured out ways to be strong through all of the hurt. We were eating dinner as a family, just the four of us, and I remember saying grace with my hands folded and my elbows on the table. No sooner than amen, he lunged across the table with a fork, stabbing me. Get your elbows off my goddamn table. I was broken again, and he knew it. The sad thing was, it wasn't only me. My brother, who was 6 years older than me, was sitting across the table, and he was getting the same done to him. People often run into me and say, man, we ran into your brother and he was a dick. You could thank my stepfather for that. We both had a terrible childhood living with that man. My brother was the older of us two and sometimes got it way worse than I did, which turned him into an asshole as an adult. To be fair, we have not spoken a single word to each other in 12 years, so I cannot speak on who he is today. Just the guy I grew up around as kids and the guy that I no longer wanted in my life as an adult. I hope he found his peace in life. The difference in age as kids, though, meant one thing. He was able to fight back against my stepfather. The only problem was he lost every single time. Mornings were brutal. The alarm would go off, and if we were not up, he would flip our mattresses over, sandwiching us between the box spring and the mattress. He would stab us in the elbows with forks at the dinner table and just find a reason to beat us unmercifully. Notice that I didn't use the word spank. There is a difference, and spankings were given by my grandparents with a wooden paddle if we did something out of line. That was normal. Being beaten every day by our stepfather was out of his pure hatred towards our father. It hurts. It really hurt bad. I felt so terrible for my brother because he stuck up for us so many times. We shared a room and I was caught in the middle of many fistfights. My grandparents couldn't know. My mom would never forgive us if we told them because then what would they think of her husband now? After all, he was so smooth on the dance floor, threw a really good punch on two young boys too. He won. He was now the man of the house officially, and I gave up completely. He had broken my spirit. My brother was not willing to give in yet. This went on for years. My brother ran away from home numerous times, but I was too young. This went on from age 4 to 11, 1994 to 2001. My mom never paid any mind, although there was a time when my brother and my stepmonster got into a scuffle over some homecoming tickets that my grandparents bought. That was a fist fight like never before, where I watched my stepfather go for a Kurt Angle style waistlock on my brother and slam him to the floor, pinning him down with all of his weight, screaming, "Give me the fucking tickets." I remember my mom screaming, "Get off him or I'll call the cops," which she never did. She didn't step out of line because she knew what he was capable of and allowed her sons to be on the receiving end of it each time. He was going away for business. He was a construction worker and each trip took longer periods of time. I figured that was one of two things. The first thought was he was shooting up and probably having sex with randoms, and the second thought was that he was gone, so it would be a little while before my brother and I had to worry about getting fucked up again. When he left, God, it was a holiday. I watched wrestling, I played wrestling, I ate, drank, and slept wrestling because he was around, because when he was around, it was not allowed in our house. Late at night, my brother and I would mute the TV on a Monday night if he was home. We would lock the door and flip back and forth between Raw and Nitro. He never knew that, and as a kid, I considered that to be my fuck you to him each week. In 2000, the relationship was not doing well. He was traveling for work, and I believe my mother started seeing someone from her work on the side. I was glad because I wanted the beatings and abuse to end. Through all of this, they had a daughter together in 1996. I loved having a little sister. She was too little to understand the abuse both of her brothers went through because of her dad. I don't know if she even knows as an adult because we don't speak. After all those years of my mother never doing anything, she was led to the final straw. The two were having an argument about getting divorced when he threatened to kick us all out of his house that he built and paid for. She said, "Okay, you want us gone? We will leave and never come back," and proceeded to walk out with my sister following. He grabbed her by the shoulder, putting his hand on his own 4-year-old daughter's chest and shoving her down the hallway, saying, "You are not going anywhere." This set my mom off like never before, and she proceeded to kick him in the crotch, beat him in the face with a telephone, and wrap the cord around his neck, choking him after he threatened to call the police. In a very sick and twisted way, I was so fucking stoked to see this, even though I was 10 years old at the time. My sister was 4 and witnessed her parents beating each other up, something nobody should ever have to see. I was also so sad. Why did it take one time of seeing her daughter being shoved to snap? She saw her boys beat every single day and turned a blind eye to it. I was starting to lose respect for her, even though I was super excited to be moving back in with Graham and Pop. "Brian, grab a backpack and pack up what is important to you. Then let's go." A few wrestling VHS tapes and ECW action figures, and I never thought about that house again. I had only bad memories there. Only Grandma Pop's house on Spring Road could comfort me. It gave me a feeling of a real home. I couldn't wait to never have to see that jackass again. If we were in a dark alley, just him and I, the adult Brian would fuck that guy up for all the years of torture he put me and my family through. It made me stronger, but no child should ever have to endure that. I make sure I explain that to my children, how great they have it. I also have learned over the years how to use my dad voice. If you have a dad voice, then they know you mean business. Never have to lay a single hand on them. They had their fair share of visiting the corner, but they should never have to experience the pain I felt. I got so tired of hearing my dad say over the years, "If I would have known what was going on, I would have done this." Well, you didn't, dude. No one did. So just drop it. Oh, and hey, Jeff, fuck you. All right, chapter 2, guys. That's chapter 2, A Living Nightmare. And boy, was that a living nightmare from age 4 to 11 for me. Something that I didn't really talk too heavily about as a young kid. I definitely didn't talk too much about it as a teenager, and I had to break free with it in my adult life because obviously there was some setbacks. On this brand new EP, How You Gonna Hide That, the first verse of the song How You Gonna Hide That is all about the childhood abuse that I had suffered. Just in the first verse, it's different parts and builds to different parts of my life, but that first verse definitely deals with that, and it's also covered in the second chapter of my book. So once again, nobody can take away from my feelings and what I felt going through all that stuff in my life. It definitely sucked that I had to hide a lot of stuff from my grandparents because I was trying to save a marriage between two people that really weren't even meant to be, and it sucks because all these years later there's a ton more, and we go into it later on down the road in the book, but I don't have a relationship with anybody in my family, and it's like I kind of had to create my own family. Like I said, I don't want to get too far ahead, but you all know the stuff because you all follow along with my life and everything like that. But I had to kind of have my own family to be able to find love. Had to have a wife and had to have children, and to experience what love was, because man, it was very tough and frugal as a kid to find love. I mean, and I felt like the only people that I truthfully was getting real love from as a kid was my grandparents. They were awesome. So, but it was a tough time in that house with as I like to call it, a step monster. And yeah, it was crazy. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and if you like it, be sure to click the like button, subscribe to this channel, Brian's Wrestling Collection, where you will continue to see me read chapters of my book, Wrestling with Life Rocking All Night, the Brian Hardy story, which is available right now on Amazon. Till next time, guys, thanks so much. This is Brian Hardy saying keep on slamming.